Emma stood before the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. Dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair styled in soft waves, she looked every bit the bride she had always dreamed of becoming. Butterflies fluttered in her stomach, but it wasn't nerves, it was excitement. Today was the day she would marry Daniel, the love of her life. The bridal suite was alive with chatter and laughter. Her bridesmaids zipped around, fixing last-minute details, adjusting their dresses, and sipping champagne. Outside, the sun cast a warm golden glow over the venue, where friends and family had already begun to gather. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Emma glanced down at Max, her golden retriever who had been her shadow for the past 10 years. He sat at her feet, ears perked, watching her every move. He had always been protective, but today there was something different about him. He wasn't his usual happy tail-wagging self. Instead, he was still, silent, watching. "Max, what's up, buddy?" she cooed, crouching to ruffle his soft fur. Normally, he would nuzzle into her touch, but today, he didn't move. His deep brown eyes locked onto hers, filled with something she couldn't quite place. Concern? Worry? Her maid of honor, Sarah, chuckled as she fastened Emma's veil. "I think he knows you're leaving him for another man," she teased. Emma laughed, but the uneasy feeling in her chest didn't fade. "No way. Max loves Daniel." She turned back to her dog. "Right, Max? You love him." Max didn't react. Instead, he let out a soft whimper, barely audible over the room's noise. A knock at the door signaled it was time. The ceremony was about to begin. Emma took a deep breath, smoothing the fabric of her dress. "Okay, let's do this." As she stepped toward the door, Max suddenly shifted. He moved directly in front of her, blocking her path. "Max, come on," she said with a small laugh. But he didn't budge. Sarah tried to coax him away, waving a treat in front of his nose. Nothing. Another bridesmaid called his name, but he ignored her. Emma's mother gently nudged him, but Max stayed firm, his body tense. The laughter in the room faded. The bridesmaids exchanged confused glances. Emma's heart pounded. Something was wrong. Then Max did something he had never done before. He let out a sharp, desperate bark. The room went completely silent. The sharp bark echoed through the bridal suite, cutting through the excitement like a knife. Everyone froze. Emma's hand instinctively went to her chest, her pulse quickening. Max never barked without reason. He was calm by nature, friendly to everyone he met. But now his entire body was tense, his ears pinned back, his eyes locked onto hers with a strange intensity. "Max, what's wrong?" Emma asked, her voice softer now, tinged with unease. She reached down to pet him, but he didn't move. His paws were firmly planted on the ground, his muscles rigid. Sarah exchanged a nervous glance with the other bridesmaids. Maybe he's just overwhelmed. There's a lot going on today. Emma wanted to believe that. She really did. But something about the way Max was acting made her stomach churn. He wasn't anxious. He was determined. It was as if he was trying to tell her something. Her mother stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, we need to go. The guests are waiting. Your father's outside, ready to walk you down the aisle." Emma hesitated. She glanced at the clock. The ceremony was already running a few minutes behind. If they delayed any longer, people would start to wonder what was wrong. Taking a deep breath, she tried again. "Come on, Max. Let's go." She reached for his collar, giving it a soft tug. He didn't move. Instead, he let out a low, mournful whimper. Then he did something that sent chills down Emma's spine. He placed one paw on her foot and stared at her with an expression so full of desperation that her breath hitched. The unease turned into something heavier, something impossible to ignore. "Emma," Sarah said hesitantly, "maybe we should just carry him outside." Emma shook her head. "No. He's never acted like this before. Something isn't right." Her bridesmaids shuffled awkwardly. No one knew what to say. The joyful energy in the room had shifted. Outside, her father knocked again, his voice muffled through the door. "Em, are you ready?" Emma swallowed hard. Her heart was racing now, but she didn't know why. Her hands trembled as she reached down and cradled Max's face. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. "What are you trying to tell me?" Max whined, his nose nudging against her arm. Then, in one sudden, startling motion, he let out another sharp bark and pressed his entire body against her legs, refusing to let her take another step forward. That was the moment Emma realized Max wasn't being stubborn. He was trying to stop her. A heavy silence filled the room as Emma stared down at Max. The playful, gentle dog she had known for a decade was gone, replaced by a creature of pure instinct, an unshakable guardian. His body was tense, his eyes pleading, his paws planted firmly against the floor like he was bracing for something. A shiver ran down her spine. "Emma, we need to go," her mother urged, her voice laced with growing concern. Emma glanced at the door, then back at Max. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her, waiting for her to make a decision. But something inside her told her to listen to Max. Sarah, trying to lighten the mood, grabbed a treat from her purse and held it out. "All right, buddy, time to move. I've got your favorite." Max didn't even glance at it. A nervous laugh rippled through the bridesmaids. "Maybe he just wants to come with us." Another suggested, "Let's carry him outside and—" Max suddenly let out a deep, guttural growl. Emma's stomach clenched. Max never growled. Not at strangers, not at loud noises, not even at the vet. It wasn't aggressive. It was warning. Her mother stepped forward, her face now mirroring Emma's worry. "Emma, what if—" She hesitated. "What if we wait just a little longer?" A fresh wave of anxiety coursed through her veins. What was going on? Why did it feel like something invisible was closing in? The knock on the door came again, firmer this time. "Emma?" It was her father, his voice a mix of confusion and growing impatience. "Everyone's waiting." Emma felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Guests were seated. Music was playing. Daniel was at the altar. And yet she was standing here, frozen, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. She knelt down, gently cupping Max's face. His breath was warm against her fingers, but his eyes, they were filled with something she could only describe as desperation. He let out a whimper, then another, pressing closer to her, as if trying to shield her from something unseen. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She didn't know why. She didn't have any logical reason for it. But in that moment, Emma made a decision. "We're not leaving," she whispered. Her bridesmaids looked at her in shock. "Emma, what?" Sarah asked, her voice full of disbelief. Emma's throat felt tight as she shook her head. "Something's wrong. I don't know what, but Max does." And that was enough. She wasn't moving. The air in the bridal suite had shifted. The light-hearted excitement from earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a strange, unspoken tension. Emma's bridesmaids stood frozen, exchanging nervous glances. Her mother's face was tight with concern. The only sound in the room was the soft whimpering of Max, who refused to move away from her. Outside the door, her father's voice came again, this time firmer. "Emma, sweetheart, what's going on? Is everything all right?" Emma opened her mouth to answer, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain it? That her dog, her best friend, had suddenly turned into a statue of unwavering determination. That he was blocking her path with a kind of desperation she had never seen before. How could she say out loud that something felt wrong, even though she didn't know what? She looked down at Max. His ears were back, his chest rising and falling with deep, measured breaths. His body was pressed against her legs like a living barrier, a wall between her and the door. He was trying to stop her, but from what? A bead of sweat rolled down the back of her neck. Sarah stepped forward cautiously. "Emma, honey, I get it. Okay, Max is your baby. But this is just wedding jitters. He probably senses your nerves and is reacting to them." Emma wanted to believe that. She really did. But something about Max's behavior felt deeper than that. This wasn't nervous energy. This was an alarm bell ringing in a language only he understood. She shook her head. "It's not just nerves," she whispered. Max let out a sudden, sharp bark, his tail low, his body rigid. Everyone in the room jumped. Emma's heart pounded. The warning in Max's eyes sent a cold shiver through her. Then, without warning, the dizziness hit. A wave of nausea rolled through her, her vision tilting at the edges. She gasped, reaching out for something to steady herself. The bouquet in her hands slipped through her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Sarah rushed forward. Emma. Her knees buckled. The room swayed. Max whined loudly and pressed even harder against her legs, as if trying to hold her up. Emma took a shaky breath, gripping the vanity table to keep herself upright. Her skin felt clammy, her pulse erratic. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't stress. It was something else. Something worse. And Max had known it before she did. Emma barely had time to register the dizziness before it struck again, harder this time. A sharp, squeezing sensation bloomed in her chest, stealing her breath. Her vision swam, the faces of her bridesmaids blurring at the edges. Then her legs gave out. She heard someone scream her name as the floor rushed up to meet her. Before she hit the ground, Max lunged, pressing his body against her, softening her fall. The world tilted, the voices around her a distant echo. Emma, Emma, can you hear me? She tried to speak, but no words came. Her fingers twitched weakly against the hardwood floor. She could feel Max's warm breath on her cheek, his desperate whimpering in her ear. Panic erupted in the room. Oh my God, is she fainting? Sarah cried, dropping to her knees beside her. Somebody get water. Another bridesmaid shouted. Emma's mother was already pulling her phone from her purse, her hands trembling. I'm calling 911. The room was spinning. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, trying to force herself to breathe through the pressure in her chest, but it was like her body wasn't listening. Every inhale felt too shallow, too weak. Max barked sharply, his body still pressed against her side. He licked her face, nudging her with his nose as if trying to wake her up. His frantic energy was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. The door burst open. Her father rushed in, his face twisted in horror. What happened? She just collapsed, Sarah choked out. She was fine a second ago, but then. Emma barely registered the commotion around her. Her limbs felt heavy, her heart hammering erratically against her ribs. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her, pulling her deeper into the dark. Somewhere in the distance, she heard sirens. Then, nothing. Bright lights flickered above her, and distant voices swirled in and out of focus. Emma struggled to open her eyes, her body feeling impossibly heavy. A rhythmic beeping filled the air, steady, persistent. It took a few seconds before she realized she was no longer in the bridal suite. She was in a hospital. Panic gripped her chest as she tried to sit up, but a firm hand gently pressed her back down. Easy, sweetheart. Her mother's voice was soft but thick with emotion. Emma blinked, trying to clear the haze from her mind. Her mother sat beside the hospital bed, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. What happened? Emma's voice was hoarse. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. A soft whine pulled her attention to the floor. Max lay beside the hospital bed, his chin resting on his paws, his big brown eyes watching her. The relief on his face was almost human. He let out a deep sigh, his tail thumping once against the floor. Her father, standing near the window, ran a hand through his graying hair. You collapsed, Emma, right there in the bridal suite. His voice was strained. Thank God Max wouldn't let you leave that room. Emma's brows furrowed. What do you mean? A doctor entered the room, a clipboard in hand. He offered her a reassuring smile. Miss Carter, you had a serious medical episode, one that could have been fatal if you had ignored the warning signs. Emma's blood ran cold. Fatal? He nodded. Your heart was under severe strain due to an undiagnosed condition, one that could have easily been triggered by stress or excitement. Had you walked down that aisle, the exertion might have. He trailed off, choosing his words carefully. You could have collapsed in the middle of the ceremony, and without immediate medical attention, the outcome might not have been as fortunate. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Max had known. The realization crashed into her like a tidal wave. He had sensed something was wrong long before she did. He had stopped her from leaving, refused to move, barked and whined, all to keep her safe. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked down at her faithful companion. "You saved my life," she whispered. Max let out a soft, content sigh. Her wedding had been postponed, but in that moment, as she reached down to stroke Max's fur, Emma knew nothing mattered more than the fact that she was still here, and it was all because of him. As Emma sat in her hospital bed, fingers gently combing through Max's soft golden fur. He hadn't left her side since she woke up, his warm presence grounding her in ways she couldn't explain. The weight of what had happened still pressed heavily on her chest. She had almost died. If Max hadn't stopped her, she might not be here at all. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she fought them back, swallowing the knot in her throat. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she held Emma's. "Sweetheart, we had no idea. The doctors said your heart condition was something that could have gone unnoticed for years." She shook her head, her voice cracking. If Max hadn't. She couldn't finish the sentence. Emma squeezed her mother's hand, trying to keep her own emotions in check. "I still can't believe it," she admitted. "He knew. He sensed it before I even felt anything." Her father, standing near the window, cleared his throat. "That dog is a hero," he said gruffly, though the emotion in his eyes was unmistakable. "The doctors said that if you had collapsed at the altar, it would have been much worse. Getting you here in time saved your life." A quiet knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Daniel stepped inside, his face etched with worry and relief. Emma's heart clenched at the sight of him. He was still in his suit, his tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked like he had been through an emotional storm. "You scared the hell out of me," he said softly, crossing the room to her. He knelt beside the bed, taking her free hand in his. "One minute, I was standing at the altar, waiting for you. The next, someone was running in, saying you had collapsed." He let out a shaky breath. "I thought I lost you." Emma blinked back tears. "I thought I lost me too." Daniel's eyes flickered to Max, who was still lying protectively against her. A small, grateful smile touched his lips. "And this guy, he knew all along, didn't he?" Emma nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She leaned down, pressing a kiss to Max's head. His tail wagged gently, as if he understood everything. Sarah and the rest of her bridesmaids arrived a few minutes later, their eyes still puffy from crying. The room was filled with relieved laughter, hugs, and heartfelt words. It wasn't the wedding day they had planned, but no one cared. Emma had been given a second chance, and she owed it all to Max. A week had passed since the wedding that never happened. Emma sat on the back porch of her parents' house, a warm cup of tea cradled in her hands. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in gold, casting long shadows across the grass where Max lay stretched out beside her, his head resting on his paws. She glanced down at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You really are my guardian angel, you know that," she murmured. His ears perked up at her voice, and he lifted his head slightly, giving her that soft, knowing look that had become so familiar. Emma reached down and ran her fingers through his fur, the rhythmic motion soothing. The doctors had told her that if she hadn't collapsed in the bridal suite, if she had walked down the aisle, if she had ignored the strange feeling, her heart might not have been able to take the strain. The thought sent shivers down her spine. Max had saved her life. A soft creak of the porch steps made her look up. Daniel was walking toward her, hands tucked into his pockets, a small, lopsided smile on his face. He had been at her side every day since she was released from the hospital, refusing to let her go through this alone. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. She shook her head, and he took the seat beside her, his knee brushing against hers. For a moment, they just sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky shift from blue to a soft pink. Finally, Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You gave me the biggest scare of my life, you know." Emma smiled, though there was a tinge of sadness in it. "I scared myself, too." He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "But you're okay now. That's all that matters." She nodded. "Thanks to Max." Daniel leaned down and scratched behind Max's ears. You're the best man I could have asked for, buddy. Max wagged his tail in response, his eyes shining with quiet pride. Emma took a deep breath. So, what now? Daniel reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Well, I still want to marry you, but only when you're ready. A warmth spread through her chest, different from the terrifying heat she had felt on her wedding day. This was peace. She looked at Max, then back at Daniel. I think I like that, she said softly. But this time, Max is walking me down the aisle. Daniel grinned. I wouldn't have it any other way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma realized that life had given her a second chance, not just at love, but at everything. And she would never take a single moment for granted again.